Professor Ghil'ad Zuckermann.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's a wonderful pleasure to be here in Aotearoa, and especially here in this area, Hawke's Bay. I would like to thank Jeremy for the invitation. I would also like to thank Patricia Dean, who is here, who introduced me to the Israeli ambassador in Australia, Yossi, who mentioned Jeremy to me a year ago, and I guess this is inter alia how it came about. I would like to start with a song, and this is because I'm very inspired by the musical talents here. I've never seen so many people, nobody is out of tune, it's amazing. So I would like to start with this song that I translated into Revived Hebrew. The song in Revived Hebrew says, and you can see it on the screen, it's cold here, she will tell me. In the water there is that wind, a mermaid, a cliff, and here is Chen. Chen, literally Grace, is the name of my first girlfriend, showing me her heart. And here is Chen showing me off how much she'll be loved, with her the heart goes on. And when I sing it, with your permission, you might be reminded of something that you already know. I don't know if you've heard of the surname of the person who wrote this song originally. So I will start. O kariliti krana ba mai motoruach bat yamtsuk vechen hine mara li et halev vehinechem oti mara kama te'ahev itaroch halev. Thank you. So this is what I call phonosemantic matching. So phonosemantic matching means you're trying to transpose both the sound and the approximate meaning of the original. But of course you do not want to lose the beautiful sound. And it's not perfect. Kamate ahev, how much should be loved, has a v at the end. Kamate ahev, kamate ahev. But I guess Tomoana wrote instead of Rotorua another, is it Waipao? So I'm sorry about that. But Rotorua is how I knew that. I want to mention that phonetic matching is what happened, for example, with the name Patrick. When you say Patu as a club, you actually marry the Maori with the sound of English in this case. And maybe I should mention that I very much enjoyed being introduced to New Zealand, seriously first time, with one person who unfortunately passed away, Erima Henare, and also Patu Hohepa that I've just mentioned. In reclaimed Bangala, which is a language that I'm currently reclaiming, meaning there are no native speakers, so it's different from revitalization when you do have native speakers like Timothy Karetu that you can actually investigate and learn from. In the case of reclamation, we do not have native speakers, so Bangala, the language of South Australia, does not have, unfortunately, native speakers, and I will explain why. We have a word, Gabiwa. It comes from Gaga Bibi Waribirga. Gaga means head, Bibi means brain, and Waribirga means lightning. And we were inspired by the Maori, by Rorohiko for computer. So in fact, you might not know that, but Rorohiko in Maori was the inspiration of the Bangala, and we neologized it several years ago. So the same in Ghana, which is another language in South Australia. So inadvertently, Maori is used by other reclamations, and I think that revivalistics which is this new transdisciplinary field of inquiry, has in its first goal to learn from other reclamations and other revitalizations and other reinvigorations. So just as we can learn from Maori, I guess Maori can learn from Hebrew, etc. So the main question today, why on earth should we invest time and money in reviving dead languages? I say dead, of course, Maori is far from being dead. Bangla was dead as a mother tongue. Hebrew was dead as a mother tongue. I will give you ethical, aesthetic, and utilitarian reasons. Ethical has to do with what is right. Aesthetic has to do with what is beautiful. And utilitarian has to do with what is beneficial, for example, for your brain, for example, for the government when it comes to financial reasons. I have to say that personally, I'm happy with ethical, and that's enough for me. I don't need the aesthetic and utilitarian reasons for language reclamation. But I think that I do need to give you some other reasons, and these reasons will come from all over the world, not from New Zealand. There are many related questions. For example, that's a very important question. Should we financially compensate Indigenous people for the loss of their native tongues? I have never heard of a tribe or of a nation who received compensation, for example, money in the bank for the loss of language. I've heard of many tribes who received compensation for the loss of land, but not for the loss of language. Is it because language is intangible? You cannot touch it. Is there a link between language and mental health? Should Aboriginal languages be defined as official languages of Australia following Aotearoa? In Australia, there are no official languages. Should we erect bilingual signs in Australia, following, for example, Wellington? In Australia, there are no bilingual signs. I mean, you can find from time to time, but governmental offices have no bilingual signs. Does language dictate the way we think? And of course, the big question, and this is a question that you need to ask yourself in case the language becomes a sleeping beauty. A sleeping beauty, my term, a sleeping beauty language is a language that has no native speakers. I know that there are some native speakers here in this audience, but a sleeping beauty is a language with no native speakers. So when there is a language with no native speakers, is it possible at all to revive it? Maybe it's too late. I would like to go quickly, because we have limited amount of time, and to tell you about this these people in the photo. So this is Robert Wilton. He's an Adnyamatna man. It's an Aboriginal tribe. And I have him in my reclamation workshops of the Bangla language because Adnyamatna is related to Bangla. So it's a little bit like, say, if there are no native speakers of Maori, or there are no native speakers of Hawaii, and Hawaii people bring a Maori to participate in the reclamation of Hawaii. So this would be the parallel thing. This is the first reclamation workshop, and the guy here, I hope you see him, Howard Richards, he's a stolen generation. So he was taken from home when he was a child, and he was not allowed to speak Bangla, resulting in linguicide, language killing, which is one of the forms of genocide, according to the United Nations. So linguicide is a form of genocide. So for genocide, you don't need to kill people. You can just not allow them to speak their language. It's enough for the United Nations to determine it as linguicide, as genocide. This guy here is a Lutheran missionary who came to visit the Bangla people because we use a dictionary written by a German Lutheran missionary in 1844. The Lutheran missionary wrote the dictionary in order to Christianize the Bangla Aboriginal people. But we, 170 years later, use this dictionary not in order to disconnect the Aboriginal people from their spirituality, but rather to reconnect the Aboriginal people to their spirituality. So it's a very interesting situation in which you do something and then 170 years later somebody else uses it for a totally different goal. So it's a beautiful kind of righting the wrong of the past. The dictionary in 1844 was written by Clamor Wilhelm Schumann. So it's kind of a UNESCO endeavor. You have an Israeli Jewish linguist, your humble servant, using a dictionary written by a German Lutheran missionary, a Christian guy, in order to right the wrong of the past conducted by Anglos vis-a-vis the Aboriginal people of Australia, who have been there for 51,000 years at least. This is a beautiful new word in Bangala, Ganuganu Muna, which means beanie. Ganuganu is sheltered and Muna is cap, so sheltered cap is beanie. Ganuganu Muna. Ganuganu Muna. Now, I would like to tell you that pursuing an academic career in the arts in 2016, at least in Australia, I don't know what it is like in Aotearoa, might remind one of the 3 marks of existence in Buddhism. Impermanence, nothing is constant, suffering, everything is painful and stressful, and no self. There is no self. By the way, this can explain the collectivism of China. China is a very collective society because of Buddhism. But, as John Adams said, and this is for our friend from Hawaii, I must study politics and war, that my sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy. My sons ought to study mathematics, philosophy, geography, natural history, naval architecture, navigation, commerce, and agriculture, in order to give their children a right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture again, statuary, tapestry, and porcelain. I would add Maori canoe making, Te Reo Maori, the language, etc. I think it's very beautiful not to forget it. I feel that sometimes we forget it in the 21st century. Based on Abraham Maslow's 1943 hierarchy of needs, in his seminal article, A Theory of Human Motivation, you can see here, I mean, of course, you have to add battery and Wi-Fi, but he had physiological food, water, shelter, warmth, safety, security, stability, freedom from fear, belonging, love, friends, family, spouse, lover, and then you have self-esteem, self-actualization, etc. So you have this pyramid, the hierarchy of needs of a human being. It doesn't matter which human being, Homo sapiens sapiens it is. I believe that we are currently, as the masses of the world, I'm not talking about the elite is always up there, but the masses are somewhere maybe in between the second and the third level. I'm not taking the battery and the Wi-Fi into account, so safety and belonging. But I think that we are going actually up. And the reason I think so, you might say it's wishful thinking, I think that it's because of the technological revolution. So let me explain the technological revolution. Technological revolution. There are 2 revolutions that we need to remember. First, the Industrial Revolution in the West. In 1760 to 1840, it turned people from seeking food to seeking things. We are all, including the Maori today, result of this revolution, because most of us do not seek food. I mean, we have food, but we want things. In the past, before 1760, if you went to Europe, 90% were farmers. How many are farmers today? Maybe 4%. So this is the Industrial Revolution. The technological revolution that you're all part of, regardless of whether or not you want to be part of, is that revolution that is happening right now. I mean, it's a long revolution, in which people, for example, use a mobile phone, people watch, I don't know, CNN, or they have Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And this will turn people, in my view, from seeking things, which is what the hoi polloi, the masses are now, into seeking ideas. I think that the technological revolution is actually an extremely important revolution. It will be, with hindsight. We are now in the midst of it, so we do not discuss it much. And this is when language revival, be it reclamation of a no longer spoken language, revitalization of a language with native speakers but not too many, like Maori, and reinvigoration with a language that has many native speakers, like Welsh, but still it's endangered. It doesn't matter which level, it will become more and more common. Language revival, which is now considered unique and weird and kind of why bother, will become actually much more common in the future. Now, I mentioned the technological revolution. I should probably mention the 4 revolutions of linguistics from a world perspective. The first revolution in linguistics was speaking, and this happened more than 70,000 years ago. So prior to that, we did not speak. Writing, approximately 5,200 years ago in Iraq. Type printing, 1450, Johannes Gutenberg develops the first European movable type printing press, and technological revolution. So these are the four main revolutions in language. Of course, they do not affect all languages in the world, because most of the languages in the world do not have a script traditionally. They do not have a writing system. Most living languages in the world do not traditionally have a writing system. Okay, so if you agree with me that in the future, because of this technological revolution, that we will turn the masses from seeking things to seeking ideas, language revival will become more and more common, I believe that I need now to explain why we should start it now. So let's begin with ethical reasons. Historical, humanistic, and social justice. As Nelson Mandela said, if you talk to a man in the language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. I believe in native tongue title. I don't know if you're aware of the expression native title in Australia. Native title is the recognition of Aboriginal people as the custodians, the owners of the land. It's a very important process in Australia, native title. I think that native title is overrated. I believe in native tongue title, because the loss of language is more severe, in my view, than the loss of land. Russell Hoban was a children's writer in America. He said, language is an archaeological vehicle, full of the remnants of dead and living pasts, lost and buried civilizations and technologies. The language we speak is a whole palimpsest of human effort and history. Palimpsest is when you write something and then you write another thing on top of the other writing. You kind of delete what was written, because a papyrus was very expensive, so you just write on top of another written text. Of course, as a historian, you're more interested in what was written behind, not what was written now. This is a palimpsest. This is Anthony Forster, a colonist in South Australia. He said in 1843, the native would be sooner civilized if their language was extinct. This is called linguicide, language killing, just like insecticide or genocide, linguicide. Another guy, you might have heard of him, South Australian Governor George Grey. He was relatively pro-Aboriginal. He said, the ruder languages disappear successively, and the tongue of England alone is heard around. He regarded the languages of the Aboriginal people as rude, and this echoes with what Jeremy mentioned earlier about what I would say linguicide of the Maori in Aotearoa, New Zealand. This is a black tie, you see. And I'm inspired by Mātauranga Maori. This is a Thai black who is here, I think. And he's going to, I call him black tie for, you know. Australia ought to learn from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander vernaculars, meaning spoken languages, should be defined as official languages of their state, territory, land. As you know, in New Zealand there are two official languages. Everybody thinks it's English and Te Reo Māori, but of course it's Te Reo Māori and the sign language, which is, I think, is very beautiful. Signs, linguistic landscape or landscape, it's also called landscape, so the landscape of the language, landscape. The landscape should be both in English and in the local Indigenous language, just like in New Zealand. And I think that Australia ought to learn from Aotearoa, New Zealand, especially when it comes to Y262, 1991. I'm sure that you have changes, etc., and I know that there is something happening right now in Wellington. But this is from 1991. The Crown's support for revival of the language should include effective policies, appropriate resourcing, steps towards the provision and public services in Te Reo, The provision of programs including Maori medium education that are highly focused and effective and appropriately resourced, an expanded role and powers for Te Tauro Whiri, Maori Language Commission, etc. So this is something we do not have in Australia. And we do not have the modification that is happening right now. This is the Australian Aboriginal flag. Do you know what the black stands for? The black? Ooh. The black stands for the people, the skin. It's not the sky, it's not Melbourne. The red stands for the soil, because the soil in Australia is red, not brown. And of course, the yellow stands for the life, or the sun. Sun is the sign of life. Now, this is the Australian Aboriginal flag designed by Harold Thomas. It was first flown in Adelaide, where I live, in 1971, when I was born. And I believe that there was a German influence. I believe so, but I cannot prove it. As you know, the German is very similar. This is my own flag. My own flag has to do with people, land, and language, because the language, the pink, is the tongue is the mouth of the land, as well as the mouth of the people. So I believe in a Trinity, not il Padre, il Figlio e lo Spirito Santo, but rather the people, the land, and the language, the tongue. The tongue is as important as the people, as important as the land. You cannot separate them. They're together. This is my own flag for Australia. I know that you have spent $26 million on changing your own flag. This is my own flag, and you don't need to spend any money. You just accept it. At this stage, I would like to show you a very short film about the revival of the Bangla Aboriginal language, and this will summarize. Yeah, you can go to the first video, thank you. And this will summarize the ethical reason why we need to reclaim languages. After that, I will continue with aesthetic and utilitarian reasons. Okay, so this is 5 minutes.
Umiwara Mission in outback South Australia, as run down now as the local language, once forbidden to be spoken inside. Many nearby Aboriginal children were brought here, like Bangla man Harry Dare.
I was taken away when I was a kid, and I knew the language. I was just learning the language when and I was taken away when I was 3 years old. So I have no idea. I was in a boys' home for 12 years, myself and my 2 brothers.
Steve Atkinson's mother was brought here too, his only link to the Bangla language.
There's no doubt that this place contributed to my mother's, or the decline of the Bangla language for my mother, but I suppose to put it in perspective, it wasn't the missionaries that done that, it was government policy. Even though my mother came in speaking her language, Bangla language, fluently at 8-year-old, by the time she was 16, she left and she couldn't put a sentence together. But just the importance of that, to be able to have that back, couldn't even put it into words.
Words that fail him in English, let alone his ancestral past. Last century's forced adoption policies saw members of the stolen generation taken to places like this mission on the outskirts of Port Augusta, effectively putting distance between them and their language. But while Bangla fell silent in places like this, over in town there's a place where those words are coming back to life. Bangla's reclamation is beginning here at the old Port Augusta School of the Air. Ghil'ad Zuckermann, an Israeli-born linguist, is Professor of Endangered Languages at the University of Adelaide. His bold plan is to revive the language using the memories of the elders and a 170-year-old dictionary made by the first Lutheran missionaries.
Out of 250 languages, 93% of languages either fell asleep already, so they're hibernating, dormant like Bangla, or they are about to fall asleep. So they have some, let's say, some elders who speak it, but actually the youngsters do not speak these languages. So this is one of the world's records in
linguicide. In other words, Australia probably is the worst place in the world when it comes to language hibernation or linguicide, language killing.
A seaside people, the Bangla once had many words for sea life. For example, multiple words for shark.
Dindu. Dindu. Let me write. Dindu. The sun is Dindu.
Here, the workshop participants even try to develop new words in language, like internet or computer. But the Bangla of Port Augusta are now a minority amongst minorities, with other tribes with other languages coming in from the north and from the east. So it's now more important than ever to grasp at the snippets still alive and to start piecing them together.
Coming back here and learning the language is something that I've always wanted to know my language, because I grew up knowing my father's side, which is Ghil'ad, but I had no idea what my mother's side was. So I sort of, this reclaiming our language is going to do wonders for my self-esteem as a Bangla man,
The community here hopes they can revive Bangla in everyday situations like street signs, greetings, shopping for dinner, or the names of native animals.
When you reclaim a language, we have evidence that it actually empowers people, so it results in a personal empowerment. People without a language often are people who lost their heritage, their intellectual sovereignty, their cultural autonomy. So there is this feeling of well-being which is related to language reclamation.
It's an overwhelming experience, because having my mother lose her language and now me being part of that rebuilding and revival of that language is an emotional thing. So I'm proud to be part of it, and hopefully I can do my mother and my ancestors proud.
That was Stephen Atkinson, a Bangla elder in South Australia. And I hope that it gave you the idea of the ethical reason for language reclamation. I would like to move on to aesthetic motivations. There was a guy called Ken Hale, and Noam Chomsky has recently emailed me about him because Chomsky supported Hale. And he said, Hale, when you lose a language, you lose a culture, intellectual wealth, a work of art. It's like dropping a bomb on a museum, the Louvre. So language here has to do with diversity, with taste, with beauty. I love my cheeses. I believe in cheeses. And if I go to the Adelaide Central Market, which is one of the best markets in the Southern Hemisphere, and they tell me, excuse me sir, from now onwards we only serve cheddar cheese, I would be extremely disappointed, because I love cheeses. This is my taste. You might be lactose malabsorbent, just like me anyway. This is a rich, colourful Australia, lucky country. Look how beautiful it was. 250 to 330 different tribes. Only 13, by the way, currently are alive and kicking when it comes to language. So it's 4%. It's an updated statistics. Look how beautiful it is. Look how ugly. Monolingual mindset Australia, one colour. It has to do with taste. You might disagree. You might like one colour. I think it's ugly. And of course you have these ugly lines which are arbitrary, not exactly arbitrary. Believe it or not, the line that divides Western Australia and Northern Territory, South Australia, has to do with the division on the other side of the world of Portugal and Spain, of South America. So actually there is a historical reason for that. But you can understand why it is so disturbing that my friend, who is Mirwung, cannot take fruit from one side of her land, which is here. Oh, sorry. I just jumped into this. So my friend Mirwung, she lives here, but then she goes to Kananara here on the other side. She cannot take fruit because it's against the law, although it's her own country. This is what we do not want. We do not want Homo sapiens sapiens, the human who knows she knows, because we all know we know. As opposed, by the way, to animals that, as far as I know, so far they do not know they know. They know, but they do not know they know, which is how they're different from us. So, like if you have two cows, for example, looking at the new bull joining the herd, one says, the other one says, that's exactly what I wanted to say. I mean, that would be extremely surprising. And if this is true, I will become a vegetarian, a vegan. This is what we want. We want the world to be like that. Diversity is beautiful. This is the most complex Chinese character I have ever encountered. It took me 67 strokes for one character. One character, 67 strokes. This is also endangered. Don't think that if Chinese is not endangered, some parts, domains in the language are not endangered. They are endangered. I would like to talk about diversity very quickly. Boroditsky and Gabi in 2010 conducted an experiment which was very interesting. They went to America, Israel, and Cook Tayore in Cape York Peninsula, which is in northeastern Australia. And they had some cards, and the cards had a sequence of events. For example, a woman finding a banana was depicted on one card. The next card had a woman peeling a banana. Third card, a woman eating the banana. And the fourth card, a woman throwing away the peels of the banana. What they did, they shuffled all the cards, yeah? They mixed all the cards, and then they asked the informants, please put the cards in order, in logical order. All the informants, all the people, all the stuff, were logical, rational, clever, yeah? They went to America. The first card was put here. Where was the second card put? First card here. Where's the second card? Here, very good. Third card here, fourth card here. So they put it from left to right, subconsciously. Why? Why? Because they write from left to right, because it's very good when you write with ink, it's very good to write from left to right. They went to Israel, and they asked the same question. What do you think happened? First card here.
Underneath.
Second card here, third card, fourth card. Right. Why? Because when you write on stone, it's much better to write from right to left. This is why we write from right to left, because we are... How many here are left-handed? I mean, look, almost nobody. So most humans are right-handed, and therefore, when you write in Hebrew, originally this is why you write from right to left, because you write with stone. They went to Cape York Peninsula. Now what happened was amazing. The first card was put here. Where was the second card? No, not on top. Never on top.
Underneath. Underneath.
Sorry? Never a circle.
Underneath.
Down, never down.
Up.
Never up. Never a stack of bar, never. Now I'll ask you a question, and I would like you, when I say 1, 2, 3, when I say 3, I would like you to answer the question using your hand. My question is, where is the north? 1, 2, 3.
I'm still going up.
Well, no, that's not the north. I saw hands to all directions. In other words, there is no... Okay, I can check it. I can check it using my compass. Okay, so that's the north. Now, had I had a Cape York Peninsula Cook Tayore person, he or she would have known that the north is there. And the answer to this question, they always put the card, always from east to west, subconsciously. Now this is all subconscious, you understand that? They do not think about it. Why? Why? And this is diversity, this is beauty of language, because in their language there is no left and right. So they might say, for example, that Jeremy sits northwest of Timothy. This is how they will talk. After a while, if you have such a language, you actually acquire a GPS, not a GPS, a compass in your brain. Now, a GPS has no compass. Therefore, when you start the GPS, they have no idea whether you need to go this way or that way. That's a problem. A GPS has no compass. You know that. They only know by comparing 2 points, right? They have a compass in their brain. Now this is beautiful, I think. I think penguins are very beautiful, pandas are beautiful. If you want to see pandas, you need to come to Adelaide. We have a small zoo. The survival of the Tasmanian devil is important. What about the survival of the Palawa languages of Tasmania? Why is it that no one cares about languages of Tasmania, but people are willing to give money to animals? I'm not against animals, I love animals, but I love kangaroos. These are orphan kangaroos, very small kangaroos. But I think that people care more about animals than about languages. I would like to tell you that we will lose a lot when we lose languages. For example, endangered grammatical ways to express familiar concepts. Mami Chapinatapai in Yagan, in Tierra del Fuego, the soil of fire, the earth of fire, the land of fire in Chile and Argentina. If you say Mami Chapinatapai, it means to look one at the other, hoping that the other person would initiate something that both sides really want to initiate, but so far no one has had the guts to initiate. I remember having this feeling when I was 16 years old, but I did not have a word for it, because in Israeli or Revived Hebrew there is no word for Mami Chapinatapai. Now this is an endangered grammatical way, because of course I can analyze it as a linguist. I can say, Ma is a reflexive prefix. Ihapi is to be at loss at what to do next. This is the lexical morphing, as linguists call. N is a stative suffix, ata, achievement suffix, and apai, a dual suffix, which in composition with ma has a reciprocal sense. So it's mam, ihapi, n, ata, apai. Mam, ihapi, nat, apai. In English, we cannot do that. Second clip, please. Thank you. In English, this is what you would do instead.
Do you want to come up for a coffee?
I don't drink coffee.
I haven't got any.
Another example, in this case of an endangered concept altogether, is Nahur. Nahur, I've never thought about this concept as opposed to Mami Chapinatapai. A camel that will not give milk until her nostrils have been tickled. You see, the point is that human imagination is extremely limited. It's enough to look at alien movies, alien films. Kiryata, you say Kiryata for film, Kiryata. This is my name, Ghil'ad, Kiryata in Maori, Kiryata. So if you look at Kiryata with aliens, most of the films in Hollywood, the aliens look like ugly human beings with two eyes, one nose, and one mouth. My question to you is, what's the possibility that an alien would look like an ugly human being, knowing that DNA exists for 3 billion years, not million, 3 billion years before people, yeah? 3 billion years. So, I mean, if there is an alien somewhere, then of course it will not look like a human being. But still, because of our limited imagination, these Hollywood films, they make it look like an ugly human being. I think it's a disgrace. Okay, Tingo, Min in Rapa Nui, which is Pascuan, to take all the objects one desires from the house of a friend one at a time by asking to borrow them until there is nothing left. I've never thought of this endangered concept. Now this is aesthetically beautiful, and I would like to move now to utilitarian benefits, which are very much important for the Maori, Te Reo Maori revitalization. Firstly, personal, mental, spiritual, and physical well-being, sense of pride, and self-esteem. This is an email from Jenna, a Bangla woman. Personally, I found the experience of learning our language liberating, my bold letters, and went home feeling very overwhelmed because we were finally going to learn our own language. It gave me a sense of identity. And I think if the whole family learned our language, then we would all feel totally different about ourselves and each other, because it's almost like it gives you a purpose in life. This is a Facebook comment from Evelyn, a Bangla woman. A big thank you on behalf of our family here in Port Lincoln. Our ancestors are happy. You've heard it from Stephen. When an Aboriginal Australian person says our ancestors are happy, it means that they're extremely happy. This is something that I would never say, by the way. I wonder whether maybe Maori would say our ancestors are happy, meaning we are happy. Language is power. Let us have ours, says perspicacious Aboriginal politician Aidan Ridgway. The goals of language revival, according to Aboriginal Australians, are not necessarily the full Monty, which means speaking the language in every domain of life. Rather, they say there is a lot in it which has to do with improving the Aboriginal well-being. This is from 2014, Niels 2. Let me show you some statistics. The National Survey of Mental Wellbeing in Australia found that 20% of Australians suffer from a chronic mental illness and experience any mental disorder in the last 12 months. But more importantly, 2008 National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Survey found out that 31% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders aged 15 plus experienced high or very high levels of psychological distress in the 4 weeks prior to the interview. In other words, if you see 3 Aboriginal Australians, according to the ABS, which is the Australian Bureau of Statistics, one of them is depressed. If you see 3, one is depressed. This is 2.5 times the rate for non-Indigenous Australians. There is a reason for that. One of the reasons is linguicide. Of course, not only, but there is a reason for that. Improving mental health. If you look at Darcy Hallett, Michael Chandler, and Christopher Lalonde, 2007, they looked at Aboriginal language knowledge and youth suicide in British Columbia, Canada, and they found that there is a clear correlation between youth suicide and lack of conversational knowledge in the native language. This was in British Columbia. I would argue that just as there is a clear correlation between language loss and youth suicide, there is also a clear correlation between language gain, which means language reclamation, revitalization, or reinvigoration, and decrease of youth suicide. Absolutely, this is the case in Australia. We need more research about it, by the way. This is all at the very beginning of revivalistics, because revivalistics compares revivals all over the world. No one has ever done it really systematically before. Okay, utilitarian benefits when it comes to bilingualism. I hope that all of you who are sitting here today are 100% convinced that to speak 2 languages natively makes you more clever than to speak 1 language natively. In other words, if you put yourself as a monolingual, and now you put yourself, the same self, as a bilingual, you will be more clever, you will live 4.6 years without dementia, longer. So for example, if in your DNA it is written that you will get dementic at the age of 80, if you're native speaker of 2 languages, you will get dementic at the age of 84.6. Now, Kovac and Miller, they did a very strange experiment. They took 7-month-old babies. Now, 7-month-old babies are not verbal. They cannot speak, even if they're Jewish. They cannot speak at 7 months old. Now, what they did, half of them were bilingually exposed, and half of them were monolingually exposed. So half of them had a French parent and an English parent, and half of them had either 2 French parents or 2 English parents. They showed them a screen, and there was a light flashing. All the babies, now you are the babies now, all the babies were looking at the screen. Suddenly, there was a light flashing on the other side of the screen. What happened was a miracle. All the bilingually exposed babies moved their heads to the new light. All the monolingually exposed babies were stuck with the first light. According to Miller, this means that bilingually exposed babies are actually more advanced cognitively regardless of language, because light detection has nothing to do with language. Now, there are many cognitive advantages of non-native bilingualism. I wish I had time to discuss it. In other words, even if you're a non-native Maori speaker and you just learn the language in order to make your children native speakers, or your grandchildren native speakers, you will get some benefits from the non-native bilingualism that you have. So I think it's very, very beautiful. I would like to start concluding, and to say that I would like to refer you to the Language Revival Diamond. This is the LARD in the Language Revival MOOC. MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Course. It's a free course that you can take on Language Revival that I devised in Australia recently. And this is the Mook, Massive Open Language. I've just bumped into somebody in Burma who told me in one of the stupas there, Professor Zuckermann, I said, who are you? He said, you are my teacher. I said, I remember all my students. You have never been my student. And he said, yeah, I took your MOOC. I'm from America. I took your Massive Open Online course. Apparently, you have like 5,500 students. Now look, William Shakespeare spelled his surname in 5 different ways, none of which was S-H-A-K-E-S-P-E-A-R-E. Spelling is not as important. I would like to mention some Australian signs and to tell you what the most important sign is. Now, these are Australian signs. I have no idea whether the ticket I received was justified. I parked on the left. This is in Sydney. This is an Australian sign. Do you know what it means? Because my Chinese students, they don't write like, weighing some weights, like doing like that. Don't write like a knob. K-N-O-B. A Chinese student asked me, why can you not drive like a chicken? Is it because chicken, they kind of move from lane to lane? This is a sign you can find in South Australia. Don't drive like a cock. And this is something that when I saw first time, I had to make a very dangerous U-turn because I'm a linguist and I wanted to take the photo of the sign. Can you interpret it? I think you need to, because you might be driving in Australia, and if you need signs, you need to understand them. But this is the most beautiful signs that I have ever encountered in Australia, and I would like to summarize. If your language is endangered, do not allow it to fall asleep. If your language falls asleep, stop, revive, survive. That's Victorian sign. If you revive a language, embrace the hybridity of the children's emerging tongue, because your language will not be the same as it used to be. It will be a hybrid based on the language that you're trying to revive and on the mother tongues of the people speaking the language. And if your language is healthy, consider helping others in linguistic need. I think we should embrace the hybridity of the emerging tongue. This is Scotty Morrison. On the left, his uncle was the famous tenor, Howard Morrison. And of course, this is our friend Timothy Karetu. Is it a long E? Timothy, right? It's not Timothy, as some people say. It's Timothy Karetu. And this was in Auckland. 2 leaders of language revival. One is doing the TV stuff, and the other one is the young one, who is Timothy here. Better a dirty, injured butterfly that is alive than a perfectly beautiful butterfly stuck on the wall. Remember that? And if we have time, we have a 7-minute clip. Otherwise, we can open the floor for questions. So whatever you want, Jeremy. Thank you so much.
We have time for 3 short questions. Emphasis on short and emphasis on question. I
have noticed 2 things. Firstly, that I said that language is kind of it's a trinity, language, land, and people. And language connects. It's like a connect. And then it just kind of the penny dropped that the Toda theory is also all about connection and kind of the bundle of the rope that links all the Maori together through language. So I think that this spiritual idea of language connecting the entire tribe, the entire people, exists very strongly in Maori culture, and hence the metaphor, the Toda theory, because of course it doesn't mean language commission literally. This is one thing. And the other thing that I noticed was that many New Zealanders, when they speak Maori, you can hear their very closed e sound. So, I mean, you can already see the influence of New Zealand English on the Maori. So, for example, instead of keri keri, I hear kiri kiri, you know? Like as if people kind of pronounce the e as more like e, like how the English people speak in New Zealand, you know what I mean? So I can actually, funnily enough, recognize a New Zealand Maori speaker through my knowledge of the New Zealand English, you know what I mean? So it's a very interesting hybridization that happens already within Maori, even though Maori is not a sleeping beauty, luckily, like Hebrew used to be for 1750 years. Maybe at this stage, I can show a 7-minute clip about the Hebrew revival journey, if we have, yeah? Is it okay? And then if there is one question, we can. Okay, thank you.
It's hard enough to transform a language a word at a time. All the more extraordinary is to resurrect an entire language from the dead as an act of political will to gift an identity to a whole nation.
Israel had a difficult birth, a tricky childhood, and a stormy adolescence. Whatever one's views of the current political situation here, it was a remarkable journey to statehood, and language was at the center of it. Hebrew was the language spoken here centuries before a man called Jesus Christ walked these streets. But after the diaspora, the dispersal of the Jews throughout Europe, and 2,000 years of persecution, Hebrew died out as a spoken language, remembered only in the Torah, in rabbinical tradition, and in Friday night suppers in Jewish homes. Fast forward to the creation of the State of Israel in the aftermath of the Second World War and the Holocaust. The most crucial question facing them was, what language do we speak? Yiddish, the lingua franca of the Middle European Jew, was polluted, tainted by the shtetl, by pogroms, and by the death camps. Russian was too limited, so they made the bold decision to reinvent Hebrew as a modern, living language.
Israeli linguist Ghil'ad Zuckermann is taking me to Rishon LeZion, where the first Hebrew school was built in 1889. Stopping off in a garage for some mechanical problem solving exposes an intriguing linguistic problem. How do you describe things that simply didn't exist in the Bible?
אני קניתי מכונית ואני רוצה לעשות בדיקה כללית של הכל, של כל המכונית, וזה חבר סטיבן.
שלום.
נעים מאוד.
היי.
אני אורן.
אורן? נעים מאוד, גלעד.
נעים מאוד, אורן.
אז אנחנו רוצים לבדוק את המכונית הזאת, כי פשוט עכשיו אני רוצה לקנות אותה, אז גלגלים, אמברקס,
Handbrakes, did you say? Yeah. Handbrakes.
יש קרבורטור בה?
לא, אין כאן קרבורטור, היום זה כבר אינג'קטורים.
I got that. You said it's the carburetor and you said no, it's fuel injected.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of English words in there.
Well, they did create Hebrew words for carburetors, etc., but not all of them caught on.
There are a lot of English words. Are there any biblical Hebrew words in there that you can see?
יש פה שמות עבריים.
Yes.
למשל, מה עברית?
Battery is מצבר.
It's a Hebrew-based word.
Right.
But obviously it's a new word because it's a new concept.
Quite, so it wouldn't exist in the Bible.
Right. Litzbor means to collect and to store. So matzber, you know, it collects, I guess, energy.
Well, that's also known as a capacitor. Isn't it? So it's capacitor, exactly the same idea. And I mean, this bottle here, I mean, obviously there would be Hebrew words in the Bible for bottles and jars. The coolant inside, but the container, the receptacle.
איך אתה קורא לזה? מיכל, עיבוי? Right. מיכל actually is a Hebrew word which means container.
Right, that's what I wanted. That you would find in the Bible. Women carrying pots and all kinds of, you know, my pot's heard, and lots of words like that in the Bible.
Yes. So
potter's vessel.
You will see modernization of ancient terms.
Yes.
But usually when it comes to cars, the English wins. For example, if you have a puncture, אם הגלגל לא טוב, מה אתה אומר שיש? Puncture.
Call it a puncture.
Teker. You see, he knows the Academy of the Hebrew Language word neker or teker, but actually people say puncture. Many Jews have
so Hebrew has an academy as well. Not so surprising, I suppose, when they started a language from scratch. Car duly fixed, we're off now to visit the place where it all began.
מבינים כאילו שזה בלגן, אבל תוהו ובוהו זה לא בלגן. אתם שמעתם את הביטוי עלה בתוהו?
When Eliezer Ben Yehuda, the prime force behind the revival of Hebrew, began to teach here, Palestine was still part of the Ottoman Empire, and his students would have been dressed as these children have today. The slow process of reinventing modern Hebrew had begun. Ironically, the Yiddish language, sturdy enough to survive the Holocaust, was facing a more serious threat from the State of Israel.
In this classroom, these were the young pioneers, whatever you call them, the early Zionists, which was not then necessarily a coloured political word, it just meant they wanted to live here. They were being taught what kind of Hebrew? Because the Hebrew you speak, which you call Israeli, which seems a very sensible idea, presumably was not the same as the one they were being taught. It was being developed.
They were taught in the best Hebrew which was available for their teachers. Let us remember that the teachers were not Hebrew speakers.
It wasn't their first language.
It was not their first language. No. They were not native Hebrew speakers.
There were none.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were mostly Yiddish speakers. Now, they could not, in fact, rid themselves from the structures of Yiddish.
But modern Israeli Hebrew has been an enormous success. It is a first language for most of the population of the country. And how is it that it managed, this engineered language managed to succeed?
I think that at the end of the day, there was a lot of ideology and the wish to have a language for the future state. And the other thing was to have a language which was a unifying tongue for all the Jews, because Jews came from all over the world.
Right, and this speaking different languages. Exactly. So in a sense it was political will and it was identity that drove it.
Definitely identity. But the important thing to realize is that the success of Israeli, of course, is not only the revival of Hebrew, but rather the survival of all the other languages like Yiddish, etc. Israeli, if you want, is on the one hand a phoenix rising from the ashes, Hebrew. On the other hand, it's a cuckoo laying its eggs in the nest of another bird, tricking it to believe that it is its own bird. This is Yiddish. On the other hand, it's a magpie stealing from American and Polish. So it's a Finny-cuckoo hybrid with some magpie characteristics. And in fact, I would argue that Israeli is not Retzach Yiddish, or the murder of Yiddish, but rather Yiddish Retzach. So Yiddish speaks itself within Israeli. And this is the irony of history. Ben Yehuda and many other revivalists wanted very much to reject Yiddish, but history tells us no, Yiddish survives beneath Israeli. So Israeli is a story of revival and survival.
Right. I suppose the only thing I would say is that if Yiddish had been chosen as the language for Israel, it would have been a funnier country. It just would have been funnier.
But we
Hey! Schlep your bag for you, sir. You go to the hotel.